Here we go again. It's definitely not peace, but it's not quite all-out war. A second night of American strikes on Iran, destroying air defense systems and missile launch sites, sending oil prices rising again. Iran predictably responding with its own attacks, targeting, it said, US military sites in Kuwait and Bahrain. President Trump talking both of possible negotiations and further fighting.
We just hit them very hard, and I say we hit them 20-1. Every time they hit us, we're going to hit them 20. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
The clashes centre on control of the Strait of Hormuz, a fifth of the world's oil and gas supply used to peacefully pass through here before the war. A memorandum of understanding between the US and Iran last month saw ships finally begin to move once again, but left control of the strait, never previously an issue, still to be discussed. Tit-for-tat military strikes resumed this week after Iranian forces targeted several tankers transiting without their permission. Iran wants all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz to take this route along its coast, while the US has encouraged them to transit near the coast of Oman. Since the MOU was signed, 917 commercial vessels have passed through the strait, according to data from leading global trade intelligence firm Kepler. 290 of them along the Iranian route, but just over 300 along the Omani coast. Another 326 turned their locators off to avoid detection by Iran, most likely travelling close to Oman.
The problem is that the Iranians believe that the US intention here is to erode Iran's leverage, its most important leverage, which is its control over the Strait of Hormuz, in order to weaken Iran's hand in the run-up to the negotiations over a final agreement or resumption of another round of conflict.
Inside Iran, massive crowds for the final day of the funeral of the country's slain supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, replete with a massive sign threatening to take revenge on Trump. Belligerent rhetoric is a given at these state-sponsored rallies, but behind the scenes there is said to be a division between hardline and more moderate factions of the regime.
Only the deaths of Trump and Netanyahu will satisfy us. We must not compromise under any circumstances, as we have no reason to compromise with the US and Israel.
Iran clearly feels it has emerged from this war with the upper hand. As foreign dignitaries from around the Middle East paid their respects to the assassinated supreme leader and his family, there were pointed chapters from the Quran recited. This one, during the visit of Saudi officials, commemorates a historic battle between a Muslim army and a far greater force of unbelievers. Allah supports with victory whom He wills, goes the verse. Neither Iran nor the US want to return to full-scale war. But this is looking dangerously like it could be the new normal. Sporadic strikes, significant economic disruption, unless somehow negotiations and diplomacy produce a sudden breakthrough.
Well, Arsenio Dominguez is the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, and he joins us now. Do you have a view on who is right and who is wrong, or are they both wrong?
Well, at this stage, what we're actually looking is to, first of all, uphold the principles of international law that regulate international trade for navigation. It is important that the two parties in the conflict clarify their views in relation to the Memorandum of Understanding. But for us, it's very clear at the International Maritime Organization that the littoral states surrounding the Strait of Hormuz have the duties and the responsibilities of managing the strait. That doesn't include impositions of who transits through the Strait, but providing the necessary assistance, safety requirements, as well as navigations. So this is why it's so important that the negotiations continue, and we also can bring the knowledge and know-how in relation to the operations that have been going through the Strait of Hormuz for many decades.
But we know there's a basic disagreement. Iran believes the agreement at the moment means that it should administer every vessel passing through the Strait of Hormuz. The Americans are trying to encourage people to use the other side of the water, the Omani side of the water, which the Iranians are desperate to stop because it would weaken them in future negotiations. So what should ships do today if they want to try and cross?
Well, at present, the reality is that I have reiterated my message that whilst there's no clarity on the safety of the seafarers, and in particular those innocents that have been trapped for many months now in the Strait of Hormuz, we should not take any risks. It is important also to recognize that during a conflict, there's a lot of statements that will be made that not necessarily will follow the actions that we take here at the organizations when we have the negotiations. So what we're working on is on the relationships between, in particularly Iran and Oman, how we can reinstate the usage of the traffic separation scheme that was adopted by IMO back in 1968, and before the conflict was operated jointly by Oman and Iran. And in the meantime, we need to continue to work on those safe guarantees for the countries to allow the trade to resume. But again, we cannot forget that whilst the conflict is going, it's going to be difficult to immediately get a final solution, and there are further guarantees that we will need required before trade resumes as it was before the conflict started.
Now, we know that eventually Iran would like to start charging ships passing the Strait of Hormuz, but right now they are not charging. So why would any ships not coordinate with Iran? Why would they try and take this other route that the Americans want them to?
We have to recognize the first part of the situations in relation to charges or fees. That is outside international law. There's no legal basis for that to be introduced on straits for international navigation.
But there aren't any at the moment.
We also need to recognize... I beg your pardon?
There aren't any charges at the moment, are there?
No, there are no charges, but we also need to recognize the importance of reiterating the usage of the traffic separation scheme that went through a process in these organizations of verifying that it's the safest route to take. The other two routes that we have at present, which are considered extraordinary routes or temporary routes, have not gone through the process of our verifications in relation to any risks, navigational charts, etc. We can use them now because, of course, the traffic separation scheme that was established in 1968 is not safe to do so because of mines. So in the meantime, that's part of the coordinations that we're carrying out. But we need to get the parties back onto the table, because if we want to resume the operations in the Strait as we were used to, we need to start thinking first on all the safety guarantees, not only for the seafarers, but also for the ships and the cargo.
Mr. Dominguez, thank you very much for your time.